a XinFin advisor and I'm a board member of the IIB Council, and I've been invited today to speak to you about hybrid blockchain and the business of blockchain. A little bit about myself. For the past 10 years, I've been a business owner, a business advisor, an investor, and a business coach to tech and non-tech startups and scale-ups. My most recent exit was Skeena Heli Skiing, which is a heli skiing business in British Columbia. And I've also designed and was general manager for a vocational education training college for one of Australia's largest skincare brands. And that was a really exciting role because we got to develop mixed mode education, certification, and we were able to secure a 97% job placement for our students that came through. And for this reason, I have a lot of respect for the decisions and the structure that IIB Council are going and putting together their certification process. Since 2013, I've also been a member of Accelerating Commercialisation. This is an Australian government initiative where the government provides grants of up to $1 million to companies, and I'm one of the advisors available to those companies once they've received that grant. Since 2016, I've been involved in blockchain, initially as an early investor and an advisor to XinFin. I've since also formed Moon Recruit, which is an agency specifically designed to help blockchain developers meet the right recruiters to place them in the best jobs around the world. And I'll go into some more detail about that later. I have a niche management company called Monster Play, and I work with Sierra Crypto.com, which is really a blockchain marketing agency. The reason we're here today is to talk about the business of blockchain, XinFin hybrid blockchain, and blockchain developer opportunities in particular. So let's start with the business of blockchain. Technology, and blockchain in particular, has been developed to solve certain problems. Different problems require different solutions, and there's a lot of different blockchains to provide a lot of different solutions. But to correctly identify the problem that we want to solve, it's important to correctly identify the client and what the client's needs are. When I look at businesses, I define them as business to business, B2B, or B2C, business to consumer. But it's a lot more complex than this, and I've broken this down here into 5 categories. I think it's important to tackle the biggest problems first, which is government, and work down to the consumer. And I see a lot of blockchain projects taking the same approach. They're looking at what are the largest problems that we can solve. The government problems that need solving predominantly need private networks, yet they also need transparency. Governments, whilst more of them are embracing blockchain than we think, they're not about to embrace public blockchain just yet. To share with you a recent article that was published by the World Bank on their website, was an article written by Enrique Aldaz-Caral, and it was about using cryptocurrencies for blockchain to track infrastructure projects and how that would save governments around $2 trillion annually, which is about 2% of global GDP. A quote from his article reads that if a government decides to construct a road, it can now track how each dollar is being spent, identify all the users of the funds, ensure that only those authorised to spend the money do so within the permitted time frame. Fraud and corruption investigations will now take 15 months on average, can be performed at the touch of a button and at a fraction of the cost. More importantly, this type of financial tracking would be a deterrent for bribes in the public sector, which amount between $1.5 to $2 trillion a year, which is about 2% of global GDP. So we look at government problems as really big problems. The next one down from there is global finance and banking. And again, they're problems that have been better suited for private networks. And you see projects such as R3 and Hyperledger that have been formed with consortiums of banks and financial institutions. Then we look at multinationals. Multinationals work internationally. They've got a lot of challenges with cross-border payments. They've got different laws in different countries, sometimes different states, different tax impacts, and also how do you track between so many jurisdictions. From there, we move to slightly simpler businesses at a national level, where the focus is more on removing the unnecessary third-party costs. Supply logistics is really big in this area, and I'll share an example with Walmart later on. And then we have the consumer. What is it that we can buy and do and transact that removes pain points? When we look at Bitcoin in particular, money transfers to families so that people can send money home is taking on and competing with how money currently is sent home through Western Union and MoneyGram. So when I look at the business of blockchain, first step is let's identify who is the client. And then the questions you need to ask is, what is that client's problem? When we look at business to business, there's also 3 core considerations for adoption. And to effectively map out the best way to solve these problems, let's look at them first in their groups. We've got regulation and law, commercial considerations, and operational. So with regulation and law, we're dealing with multiple governments, not just one. Governments have relationships with each other for international trade, even interstate trade. And you need to be aware of them when you start looking at what impact will the blockchain we're designing have? How will it work across these borders? For example, in Australia and in Europe, we've got sales tax, GST. In Europe, they call it VAT, which is quite easy to collect taxes and account for domestically. But how do you do that internationally? How will blockchain solve that problem? When you look at ownership, government's very detailed on ownership, be it on land or even all goods and services. If we're using blockchain to track, say, property transfers, what works in one state may not work on another because there's more layers of proof of who owns this, proof of when that gets transferred. So there's lots of considerations. Are you building a blockchain for a domestic solution or a global solution? When we look at the commercial obstacles for company adoption, we've got such things as privacy, auditing. I like to look at it from the perspective of the greatest economic benefit. So for banking and finance, where they're needing privacy and audit requirements, they're really looking for a private blockchain solution where it's invitation only. The greatest economic benefit for them is intrabank, it's bank to bank. It's not dealing with the customers yet. There's more money to be involved and more pain points for them working at a commercial level bank to bank. So they look at public facing solutions as a secondary or tertiary. And the third consideration is operational. Do they actually have the resources internally and externally to develop, implement, and manage the ongoing blockchain solution? So let's look at public blockchain. So the most valuable benefits for public blockchain are the transparency and the immutability that comes with decentralized verification. In the world of business, whilst this is a place that I'd love to get to, it doesn't mean it's a place they're going to start. When we look at private blockchain, which is an ideal solution for governments and banking and finance, because privacy, accountability, and invitation only are really important requirements for them, as too are transactional speed and scale, they're going to prefer that invitation only environment. This is where we have the consortiums of 200 banks forming the R3, Hyperledger working with other financial institutions. And then we come into the world of a hybrid blockchain, which is really where private blockchain will start to meet with public blockchain. So you get the benefits of private, areas where government, multinationals, and banking require at the moment, and the benefits of public, which is the transparency and the immutability. We're really at early days yet. We know that in time, public blockchain will definitely make leaps and bounds for scalability and speed. But at the moment, the very first step for these large institutions and for government is going to be towards a private blockchain. Their next step will be towards a hybrid blockchain. Let's look at some examples with blockchain adoption now. I mentioned before about the greatest economic benefit, because really it's corporations that are starting with blockchain at a large area where they can have the largest impact. So in many cases, they're going to look for a B2B solution before a business to consumer solution. So let's look at Walmart as an example. They're the world's largest company by revenue, over $500 billion. They've got 100 million customers a week, they're massive. But they implemented an IBM private blockchain for supply chain management before considering offering crypto payment for their consumers. Why? Well, it's estimated only 1% of the people in the world have crypto. So why build a solution that will only benefit a maximum of 1% of the market? It's not as profitable as building a solution that could save them 5 or 10% internally. And that will have a knock-on effect of cheaper prices and other benefits for all the customers, not just the crypto ones. So internally, the private blockchain solution for them in supply management, that can reduce their internal item tracking for down to 6 days, 18 hours and 14 minutes to 2.2 seconds. They use this test case for some mangoes where they wanted to ship. Where do they come from in case they have to recall the goods? What used to take this long is now literally seconds. So their priority is an internal blockchain, application first. That gives them the largest economic benefit at the lowest risk. It's got minimal consumer, regulatory, and financial risk. And it really shows them about understanding your client and your client's problems first so that you can build a solution to solve those problems. And when developing blockchain, it's really going back to what are the client's problems, what are the direct impacts we have, and what would be the indirect impacts we have. So now let's look at hybrid blockchain. So understanding your clients and your clients' problems, let's build that solution. So XinFin decided that their clients are governments, banking, finance, trade, global business. They had a very clear picture of who their clients are, and they have a very clear picture of what their problems are. They've met with lots of them. Currently, all of these clients are private network centric. That's where their focus is, but they would definitely benefit from the public network features and also their values. So hybrid blockchain took the best elements of a private blockchain and a public blockchain, and they provided an enterprise-ready blockchain solution that's much better suited to their clients' problems, specifically highly regulated enterprises with commercially sensitive data. So we look at hybrid blockchain. XinFin was the first one to develop a hybrid blockchain. It's built on Ethereum, which we know is a public blockchain, and a fork of Quorum. Now, Quorum's a private blockchain that was actually developed by JP Morgan. JP Morgan developed it for their clients, banks, financial institutions. They understood that there's huge benefits in blockchain, but just not to be public just yet. So the platform of hybrid blockchain that XinFin developed is smart contract enabled. The platform is industry agnostic, and they've already got quite a few apps up and running on it. Let's have a look at the first app. So TradeFinex was the first app that was built on a hybrid blockchain. It's a decentralized peer-to-peer marketplace, and it brings together three parties: beneficiaries, investors, and suppliers. As the first platform that was built, well, another way to look at it actually is that they've really built a global crowdsourcing platform for investment and transparency around investment. So when we look at starting with beneficiaries here, the beneficiaries for TradeFinex at the moment in the pilots that they've been running are governments and small businesses. So two different extremes. They're running TradeFinex for investment infrastructure projects. It's costing between the tens of millions and the hundreds of millions of dollars. We're talking roads, hospitals, airports, water plants, power plants, sewage plants, solar power areas. So the beneficiaries, the governments here, they're needing to find investment money to help fund these projects. There's $97 trillion of infrastructure needing to be funded globally over the next 20 years. So they're using this platform to crowdsource that investment. It's an open market. When we look at the investors, those investors at the moment, we're looking at governments or investors, sovereign funds, private equity, venture capitalists. They're all wanting a platform to help them look for investments, but their needs are definitely privacy. They don't want people to see where their money's going or what they're investing it in. But when it comes to spending their money on building those services, they're wanting public verification. So they're wanting to be able to work outside of just a private blockchain. So they're looking for a hybrid solution. And then when we come to the suppliers, these are the companies that actually build the bridges and the hospitals and sell the raw materials and all the products. So they work for the beneficiaries and they're spending the money on behalf of the investors. So TradeFinex is a platform that allows those three to talk together with total transparency on an invitation-only private blockchain, but uses a hybrid feature to access a public blockchain so that they can verify transactions through a decentralized network. So that's just one example of the first dApp that's been built on a hybrid blockchain. There's quite a trend moving forward with hybrid blockchain. We've got Fortune magazine article that was published early last year by BNY Bank Mellon, introducing that hybrid blockchain is undeniably on its way to the future. So if we look at the trends here, Yes, my notes are all moved up. The interconnection of public and private chains is definitely creating a stronger network. I'm aware that hybrid blockchain has been having meetings with banks already to look at consortiums so that people who aren't a member of that consortium can start talking to banks that aren't participating in that. Public and that hybrid is the only way that they're able to achieve that at the moment. We've also had quotes from Stephen Thomas. He was the CTO at Ripple. He's now moved on to start his own project dedicated to smart contracts. But as CTO of Ripple at that time, he published an article, The Death of the ICO. One of his 5 predictions was that of hybrid blockchain. He wrote here that until we've seen proliferation of both public blockchains like Bitcoin and private blockchains like Hyperledger. Going forward, we'll see the rise of a hybrid blockchain, which will combine the best of both worlds. So when you look at blockchain, it's all about what are the questions you need to ask as a business so that you can develop the right solution for them. I also like to take that a step further and go, as a blockchain developer that's embarking on furthering your own education and your own learnings, what are the questions that you need to ask of yourself? The industry at the moment is booming. We're at that opportunity where, according to TechCrunch, and this article's from earlier this year, so it's already 6 months old, there's now 14 job openings for every one blockchain developer. So there's huge opportunities for you as a developer going forward. The opportunity now is what will you do to maximize the benefit for you and look at yourself as a business and a career path. When we look at job market growth, how much planning and research have you put into your career? If we look at the latest data from Upwork's the outsourcing and offshoring freelance platform, the top 10 blockchain-related skills and demand from the freelance communities for Ethereum, Bitcoin, JavaScript, cryptography, PHP, there's a lot of crypto-centric opportunities, and these are topping all of the searches inside of that freelance platform. So you need to consider, you've got several things that you can consider. Are you looking at working full-time or part-time in blockchain? Do you want to be location independent so you don't have to travel? Or are you happy to move cities or even countries for the opportunities ahead? And when you ask yourself these questions, you also need to consider about formalizing your skills with certification. It is important, and this is one of the greatest benefits with IIB Council's professional blockchain certification. It gives you something that crosses borders with you and creates a benchmark that's being recognized in the workplace. So with education and certification, as I mentioned in the introduction, I also have a background in education and training, and I understand how important job-focused education and certification is, especially the value of a globally recognized certification. I'm a big advocate for staff that are dedicated to continual learning in both professional and personal growth. So the IIB Council offer mixed modes of delivery. You've got online self-study, online classroom study, and also corporate training. If you look at your career over, say, a 2 or 3 year span, one of the questions you should ask yourself is, how many different courses and levels of certification would you like to achieve by the end of those 3 years? And then start mapping out time to achieve those. Because continued personal and professional development definitely lead to both a lot more career opportunities as well as salary package improvements. So let's have a look at salaries. Global salaries, to compare the top salaries around the world for similar skill sets. And as you can see from the chart, there's quite an astounding difference from what you can earn in Australia to what you can earn if you're in China or India or even the UK. The other opportunity that comes out of this salary report is a lot of these positions are becoming location independent. So you can still be part of a team without having to change countries, even though the largest opportunities for growth are if you are open to the idea of moving cities or countries. More and more remote work is opening up for these opportunities. So I call it planning your future. Education and certification is definitely something that needs to be on your personal roadmap. You need to define the role you have now and the role that you want. You should be open to looking beyond your country and definitely research the global job market. We've put together a report called the Blockchain Salaries Report. It's about 7 or 8 pages. If you go to Moon Recruit's website, down there, moonrecruit.com, enter your details and they'll send you a report for free. It will give you an idea of what is available around the world and what you can expect. So your next steps from where I see them are education and certification, starting off with the IIB Council's Blockchain Professional Certification. Define the role you want and the steps that you're willing to take to get there. Decide if you want to look beyond your city and country or work remotely, and then research the global market for the career that you want. I'm open to some questions now. Just to refresh you, the 3 topics: the business of blockchain. What are the questions you need to ask to help you address the best solutions? Zinfin's hybrid blockchain and the customers they're serving and the opportunities that that creates. And then for yourself, what are your opportunities as a blockchain developer and how can we help you achieve them? Thanks for your time, and I'll open up for some questions now.